Okay, so far we have covered sort of the two main categories really of animation. We've done frame by frame animation when we were doing the Magic Dot, which you have a frame, and then we did keyframe animation when you guys did the kinematic or kinematic text. I can't remember what I called it, but the moving of the text objects and applied keys to them, and I showed you just the different styles. One of the things that's a really common technique, this is more of a technique than really one of those two, is trying to blend two drawings in order to make a transition between them. And so, really, a common tool and asset that you will see in most of like your Saturday morning cartoons, and even in feature film animation. Very often you'll have a character, and let's say they're going to like a 2D character, and let's say they're going to point at something. Well, they obviously would start off with a hand, maybe a fist, let's say, and then they have a drawing of a pointing finger, right? So those are two separate drawings. So what they'll do in order to blend between them is they will lift the hand up and then they will push it out. And as they push it out, they will switch from the fist to the pointer finger. And what that'll do is it'll kind of blend from one to the other. Okay, so it's very common that, especially when you're doing hand drawn animation, that you need to basically just transition from one image to another. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can go about doing that. One method is a morph. Okay, so basically it's just a process of you start with one drawing. You can see the drawing here, and then you have your end drawing, which would be here, and then you make a transition from one to the other, and you just more or less manually draw them. So you might so if you look at here, the first two drawings are the same drawings. I just take this drawing and I just rotate it and shove it a little bit over. And the last two drawings here are also the same drawing. And all I did is I just rotated it. So I kind of use this rotation to kind of hide that transition. You don't want to just purely blend. It's a lot better if you use some sort of transform, whether it be scale or movement, scale or rotation or position. One of those is best. Okay, so and then all you really do is you just draw. You just slightly try to draw it till it becomes the other one. So normally what you would do is sort of do a key in between. So this is obviously the last. This is this one here and this one's here. So I'd go halfway between. So I would do this, and it should be kind of halfway between these two, and then you would draw halfway between these two, which you'd end up with this, right? And then halfway between these, you'd end up with that. And then halfway between these, I end up with this. And then what you'll do is it just sort of, you'll get kind of a blend to it. It takes a little bit of skill. You can see this one's not super successful. That's partly because I'm going from like very different objects. But if I can make it semi work with things that are wildly different, then you can make it work with something that's a little bit more similar. Okay, so that's the morph, just more or less just kind of frame by frame in essence, sort of like and just manually drawing a blend from one to another one. It is a little bit more time consuming, but it has a very organic kind of feel, and it can look really neat and interesting. The other method is the switch, and so the switch is extremely simple, and this is the most common. This is more like what I was explaining with the pointer finger. So you basically hide the transition through purely just keyframe motion. So these are the frames that you see here. So if you look at this, it looks like this kind of pops into that, right? But at no time are there any new drawings. All I do is I move it from left to right consistently, and I squish this down. I start this squished, and then I pop this back up, and it settles. And it gives this sort of feeling like it's going boom, and I didn't have to make any extra drawings. I just had to move those frames. So you can hide a lot of you can really do create a lot more limited animation and just hide the transitions just through motion. And sometimes you'll even throw motion blur in there. Naturally, the viewer will sort of blend between the two. Okay. Now, if this is something you want a specific lesson on, and if you care about this, you should. I did make two tutorials here. So one's the switch, and the other one is the morph. The switch is obviously a lot less work. I think you should at least. This is super useful. This is just manually drawing from frame to frame, but this is a really handy thing. So there's this one, and then there's the morph one. But I would just say, you don't even have to necessarily follow along. You can follow along there if you want. So now it's not. Let me refresh this. You can follow along if you want because I have the file right here. But you could just play it and then just watch it. And if you want, like if you're just watching it, this is what I do when I watch tutorials. Just click on that little gear here and just go to playback speed and switch it to 2. And if you look, it's only 7 minutes, so it'll take you like 3 minutes, and you'll get a rough idea of how I did this really basic thing, because this is a super useful skill that you'll see that just constantly. A lot of the animations that you're watching, that is what they're doing. Okay.